it would certainly seem that there really are primarily two entities that exist in our world. Okay. I don't know what they are. I don't know, words or terms or anything like. I don't want to, if I say this, then people are going to start to make assumptions that they shouldn't. But there are two entities. There are groups of people. One group of people, I consider us. I would call that humanity, human beings. And you can see, right there. You said God and Satan. I don't want to do that because, well, first of all, not everybody agrees with that idea, and I certainly don't. And a lot of people are going to start bringing in their own tribalism into it. But there's a way to get around that and to really get through all of the klipot, husks, all of the coverings over reality. Okay, you have, and I think Viktor Frankl, and I know the Lubavitcher Rebbe was a huge fan of Viktor Frankl, and Viktor Frankl said that there are really only two species in the world. I'm paraphrasing. I'm hoping I'm delivering the spirit of what he said. He goes, there's the species of the decent and the species of the depraved. So that's obviously an overgeneralization, and it sounds like some kind of symbolic, wishy-washy thing, but it's a literal reality. It's such a literal reality that I wish people could really understand how true that is, because there really are two different species in our world. And if you think about it, wouldn't that explain a lot of what's been going on in human history, right? Okay, so humanity, which I consider everyone here a part of that, right? We have we have an attraction to basic, whether we understand the reasons or not, whether they're conscious or not. And among us, there are people who call themselves atheists, and among us, there are people who call themselves religious. But Vera, you've mentioned people who just, when you ask them, well, why did you do it, right? And they're not religious, and they're not, you say, well, I just had to. I could not do it. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. Okay, there's some kind of there are characteristics that make a person a human being, and there are characteristics that exclude people from that category of being. Okay, so human beings have a natural inclination towards basic morality. Okay, which means you don't feel that it is correct to harm a person either physically or mentally, emotionally, or damage their property for any reason. You live and let live. You want to be left to live, right? In peace. Okay. This inclination is a reflection of the Ten Commandments. That if you look at the Ten Commandments, they're basic morality. Okay. Generally speaking, men are attracted to women, and they tend to want to, at some point, have a family and children. Women tend to want to do the same thing, and children are beloved, and families are developed, and families look at each other and relate to each other, because parents know how deeply parents love their children. This is such a it's such a deep love. It's so powerful. So parents understand each other, and this is basic morality. And there are those people who, let's say, they're not inclined to have a family. They're not attracted to the opposite sex, and they don't produce children, but they see the importance of it. Okay, they understand that that they are in the minority of what is normally seen within our species, and they're supportive of people who want to have families and have children, and not to be abused or molested, right? Or not to have that institution constantly challenged or constantly demeaned, right? I don't know why this comes to mind. There are these Italian fashion designers. I think it's Dolce and Gabbana, right? Two gay guys, but they're always like, you know, they're always like very critical of like politically gay people, you know, people who use sexuality as politics, and they try to harm the basic family unit. They're like, what are you talking about? Like, we, you know, everything is inspired by, you know, you don't have to, you know, look into their statements about it, but that's not an isolated incident. So I consider them human beings. You understand? So, but on the other side, there are people who are truly, truly against everything that we just mentioned. Everything. Okay. They do feel that they are justified in harming people if it suits their purpose. And they really, and many of them feel very, very, that their purpose is very important. It's more important than other people's lives. Okay. And so that's how I would term these two entities. I don't consider that to be the same species. That's just me. There's something within the consciousness. I'm not talking about the body. I'm not going into, you know, people like David Icke, you know, oh, the reptilians. And no, it's something within the consciousness. Okay. There's, just because two people look, just to, you know, there you have two organisms that physically look the same, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are. We have to understand that what makes people is more than just your body. It's what's inside. It's what is attached to it. It's what has become bonded to it, your soul, your consciousness, and not all of those are the same. Okay. So I don't pretend to know more than that, but it's certainly very clear. And it was made clear by the people that we're discussing here. Okay. And, you know, when you study their histories, whatever is explained, whatever they explain about themselves, their backgrounds, the organizations they've, you know, risen through, right? You'll see that they all have some connection to some sort of Hermeticism or some sort of, and I mentioned this before, some kind of Gnostic order, if you will. There's many of them, you know, or many people know these things as like secret societies and stuff like that. And obviously they vary, okay? However, they have some overlapping stuff. They essentially all worship Plato. Plato, you know, everybody who goes to public school, you've all heard of Plato. Nobody knows what Plato said. Nobody knows what he stood for, okay? Like, you know, you don't know, like communism came straight from Plato. People would be shocked by that, but it's clear as day if you just read if you read it, okay? So they believe, and there is a spirituality that's connected to their belief system. And let me just name some names. We're talking about, let's say primarily the World Economic Forum and all of their associates. People of that nature. Klaus Schwab, for untold human death. It's not a joke. Okay. So obviously Bill Gates. So they believe essentially, and many of them really are very religious. And this is what would shock most people. They're very religious, except not a religion that you're familiar with. Okay. It's the truest form of Satanism. Okay. So what does that mean? Like, you know, right away, people are having visions of like Anton LaVey, you know, wearing stupid robes, you know, and weird like villain mustaches and all this kind of stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. This is what they believe. They believe, and if you've had anybody who's had a classical Western education, right, the 7 liberal arts, you've heard about certain concepts in Greek philosophy. You've heard about you know, certain ideas in Greek mysticism, right, like the demiurgus, the demiurge. So essentially, you have Gnostic cults, and they kind of like parasite within all the world religions, right? Like kind of like all under your nose. And so they believe essentially that this world that we live in, right, the physical, a world that's made of physical matter, was created by an evil entity, which they call the demiurge, and they identify that demiurge with the God of the Hebrew scripture. Okay, I beg everyone to confirm everything that I'm saying. there are academic Gnostic scholars that will tell you exactly what I'm telling you. Please investigate this. Okay. So they believe that the God who created this world and the one who gave us the 10 Commandments, just basic morality, right, is an evil being who needs to be thwarted. His agenda must be thwarted, and essentially, ultimately, this world itself must be destroyed or dismantled, depending on which cult you're looking into. Okay, so they believe. So when they study the various religious texts, they adopt the religious text, but they reinterpret them, and they did so also with the Hebrew Scripture, right? So they understand the Garden of Eden as a prison created by the demiurge. They understand that Adam and Eve were spirits which were imprisoned in physical form by this evil entity, and the serpent in the Garden of Eden, right, which many equate to Satan, which is true, okay, is either a higher God or a messenger from the higher God to save mankind. And obviously this parallels with many other there's the Prometheus and so on and so forth. There's a lot of parallels to this idea. Okay, now the people who are currently destroying our world and who were destroying our world in World War II were all part of some sort of order that had this basic belief. Please, I promise you, look it up yourself. I swear. Okay. Look into the UN, look into Alice Bailey, look into all these people, okay? And you'll see the connections. Now, I just wanted to mention that, let's say in the last chapter of history, let's start it from the early 1900s, right? You've had the most powerful people in the world who are part of this mindset that we just described. And, a lot of people call them the banking families, right? You've heard some of their names: the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, and the Roosevelts, and the Delanos, and so on and so forth. Okay, to have a really good idea of what is really going on certainly in the 20th century and now, please read Anthony C. Sutton. He was a Stanford historian, not a Jewish guy at all. But he really, really organizes everything. He really, really shows you what was going on. He shows you that the same people who financed Hitler were the same people who financed the revolution in Russia, the Russian Revolution, communism. Why were they doing this? He doesn't want to make a claim of something, something that sounds extraordinary, like some sort of spiritual plot. He wants to say it's all about money and power and a captive market or something like that. But that's just part of it, So, and Vera, in your documentary, it shows that too. It shows that not America, but entities within America financed World War II, financed the death camps it was almost micromanaging the whole process of the death camps. IBM, GM, right? When people hear IBM, or not really IBM, but when GM, they get offensive. Like, oh, that's America. No, it's not. America is its people. Okay, America is its principles. It's not GM. Okay, so you have entities, parasitic entities in every civilization, every country, okay, who they recognize each other. We don't recognize them. They see themselves as something different than than humanity. They see themselves, they can recognize each other somehow, and it's international. It doesn't, this creature, whatever it is, right, which it finds itself in every geographic location, it'll find itself in every group, okay, and they'll recognize each other when they travel abroad. Like, oh yeah, there's those, give it a name, whatever, I don't know, right? The Yankees, Oh, look, there's a Yankee over there. Just give it any name, but they can recognize each other. Okay. And people need to understand, people need to understand this. People need to understand this, like Bill Gates and Elon Musk and Klaus Schwab. I'm just using the usual suspects. They look at each other and say, yeah, that's there's my people. They organized each other. The reason why it's so shocking to most of us, and is because it's such a level of depravity, it's such a level of evil. They are 100% psychopaths, 100% psychopaths. They have no remorse. They have no problem lying. They have no problem literally saying anything, and then literally saying the exact opposite a little bit later when it suits their purpose. Elon Musk is the prime example of this kind of person. Okay, sorry for any Elon Musk fans, but the guy's scum. Okay, and he's especially dangerous. Him and a guy like Netanyahu, because they know exactly what I want to hear. They know what regular people want to hear. They want to hear somebody, stick up for families and conservative values and blah blah blah, all this kind of stuff. They don't buy into any of it. They just say what needs to be said to get you people on board. That's it. Okay, so the fact is that people really don't understand that there really are two entities in this world. Okay, we don't necessarily recognize them. They recognize each other, and they can tell the difference between themselves and you. You will find them right now in the halls of power of all of our civilizations, certainly Western civilization. Okay, that's why Operation Paperclip. Do you understand? So they took the worst of this type of individual from Germany, right? The worst, because the worst Nazis were not brought to justice. They weren't hung. Those are tokens. Everybody, all of them were just tokens. Even Hitler. The worst of the worst were the scientists, were the doctors, were these engineers, and most of the time the worst people, you don't even really know their names. They're behind the scenes. That's who was transplanted to the United States in a nice, lovely Alabama neighborhood, Huntsville, Alabama, and given wonderful positions in NASA and in the military industrial complex. They were just brought home. You understand? Because they were joined together with their people here in America. It's not a shocker that such a thing happened. It's not a shocker that such a thing happened in England. It's not shocking that England recognized their own and gave them a refuge and gave them a new life, because they have that in England too. They have it everywhere we go, and in Israel too. And that's the biggest shocker. People think that because somebody comes ethnically or physically from the Jews, does that mean that they have a Jewish soul? No, clearly not. Also, what about lying? Why do we necessarily have to believe literally everybody and everything? And Vera, I'm going to shut up now. I'm saying that one of the things that they use to confuse people is misnomers. Do you understand? You mentioned a Jewish group that attacked you for trivializing the Holocaust. So here's the reality, folks. I don't know if you're going to fully agree with me on this, Vera, based on the last, but anything Jewish comes from the Torah. Jewish is unnecessary, and it doesn't even exist really outside of the context of the Torah. The Torah defines what is Jewish. Torah equals Jewish. These organizations despise the Torah. They despise the Torah. They look at people who look at Torah with any value as cockroaches, as vermin. And you mentioned that kind of phenomenon. That's been going on in Israel. Okay, so it wasn't a Jewish organization that attacked you, Vera. It was an anti-Jewish organization.